All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro coming up here in just a few minutes. We'll be talking to Congressman Seth Moulton. He is one of the few Democrats that actually walked out during the State of the Union speech. So we'll be getting to him in just a few minutes. You know, that last caller was very interesting to me because here we have somebody who's a Trump supporter, could not vote for a Democrat. And the reason why she's voting for Trump is because she got a raise, right? Which I'm happy for her. I'm happy for anybody who works hard and deserves a raise, right? I'm not happy for people that don't deserve raises. I'm going to assume she's done a good job at her, at what she does, whatever she is doing, and she got a raise. I'm happy for her. But then when I ask her, because this was the big point for her why she's going to vote for Trump in 2020, I said, what has Donald Trump done for you as far as policy-wise? What policies has he put in place in order for you to get the raise? And she couldn't answer it. Don't you think that's an important answer? I think it's an important answer. But anyway, the State of the Union speech, people are still talking about it a few days ago. And there were a couple Democrats that actually walked out during that speech, and one of them certainly a friend of the show. We have a lot of respect for him. A former Marine Corps combat veteran, deployed 4 times, and we love having him on. That is Congressman Seth Moulton. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Absolutely. Good to be back.
Appreciate it. So a lot of questions to get to in a short period of time. Let's start with the big one. We all watched the State of the Union address. We know that you were not the only one to walk out in the middle of it. Can you explain to us what triggered you and why you did that?
Absolutely. Look, I left the State of the Union after Donald Trump, who's a draft dodger. He's mocked John McCain, Gold Star families. He's mocked soldiers with traumatic brain injury most recently. After he started talking about all the good he's done for the military. I mean, it's just not true. He's been terrible for the military. And the example, let's also not forget pardoning war criminals.
Right.
This is a guy who has betrayed the troops, not led us strongly. And so when he started saying that, that was just that was a straw that broke the camel's back for me. That was one step too far. He said a lot of lies during his speech, but that one hit personally, and so I stood up and walked out. Were
you in there when Republicans were chanting 4 more years? Because I thought that was beyond inappropriate. What do you make of that?
Yeah, it was totally inappropriate, But the problem is all these Republicans are just scared of the guy. And it's kind of pathetic that they're all scared of a draft dodger. But they are. They're scared of him. And they're not willing to stand up to him. So they say all these things in private about how terrible he is. But then they'll go there, and when they're on TV, they'll do things like that. It's just totally inappropriate. Even worse, I think even worse than the State of the Union was Donald Trump's performance at the National Prayer Breakfast yesterday.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if you heard about this, but it was a really impressive bipartisan event with Democrats and Republicans sharing the podium. In some cases, literally sharing the microphone and talking about the teachings of Jesus, where he says, you've got to love your enemies. And we had a speaker, Arthur Brooks, who's an American conservative, who gave a great talk about that, about love thine enemies. And he literally quoted Jesus. And what happened next? Donald Trump got up and said, I disagree with you. In other words, the president just immediately got up and said, I disagree with Jesus Christ. We should not love our enemies. And he went on to attack Democrats, to say that that the impeachment process, which is written into the Constitution for presidents who break the law,
right,
which Donald Trump did. He broke the law. Don't forget that. He broke the law. He just says we're evil. It was so hypocritical, and I can't tell you how many Republicans have come up to me and just shaken their heads and said, this is disgusting, it was terrible, and yet they'll defend him on TV.
Yeah, can I ask you about that? So how many Republicans have you spoken to? And we don't expect you to name names here. If you want to, you're more than welcome to. But how many Republicans have gone up to you that actually voted for him to be not guilty and that have gone up to you and talked about it privately, making it sound like he is guilty?
No, I don't know what the number is. I'm not going to use names. These are my colleagues, but
right,
it's the worst hypocrisy you can imagine.
Really?
These people know that they're doing the wrong thing, that they're just totally political. And when you saw Mitt Romney get up and give that speech, you saw a picture of political courage. You also got a good measure of exactly how rare it is.
Yeah,
one Republican in Congress.
Right. I want to talk to you about Romney right before we get to that. Let's talk about Alexander and Rubio, 2 people who voted not guilty, yet in their explanations about their vote, they pretty much said he was guilty. I am so confused by this, Seth. I just don't understand it. What do you make of this? What do you make of these senators getting up there and saying, well, you know what? I voted not guilty, but we all know he's guilty. I mean, that's pretty much what they're saying, right?
It is. They're trying to have it both ways. You can't. They're being cowardly, and they'll be remembered for that. Someday their grandkids will ask them, "Excuse me, like, how did you do this, Granddad?" And they're not going to look good in the light of history. I'm not sure why they don't think about that, why they don't understand that. But John F. Kennedy wrote a book. Actually, it turns out probably a speechwriter wrote it, but he wrote a book called Profiles in Courage. And I think they profiled 7 or 8 politicians throughout American history who displayed real political courage. And every single one of those examples is someone who stood up against his own party. It's not someone who just fought really hard against the opposing party, like these guys are trying to do or like Trump does every day. It's someone who had the courage to go against their own party, to say, we're the ones, look ourselves in the mirror, we're the ones who need to do a better job. That's what Mitt Romney did. He looked himself in the mirror. He said, we Republicans need to look ourselves in the mirror and recognize the truth here. And the truth is that the president broke the law.
Yeah, no question. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Congressman Seth Moulton out of Massachusetts. And Seth, let's talk a little bit more about Mitt Romney. So we did our first segment talking about people on the right that are going after Mitt Romney. I don't know if you heard this story. The White House is now putting out talking points to go after Mitt Romney, allegedly. And if you just watch Fox News, which I'm not sure you do, Seth, I watch it from time to time.
I watch it from time to time.
Yeah, so the likes of Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson, Lou Dobbs, they're calling him selfish. They're calling him self-centered. They're saying he broke ethics violations. In fact, Laura Ingraham went as far as to say in 4.5 years, I'll run against him if he doesn't resign. I think it's absolutely deplorable and disgusting. What do you make of the way the right is attacking Mitt Romney?
It's so pathetic. I mean, these people are like in middle school. They think that it's selfish to actually have the courage to do the right thing. They think it's an ethical violation to actually be ethical instead of do what Mitch McConnell tells you to do, which is violating your oath. They all swore to be impartial jurors, and yet half of them said, and Mitch McConnell included, we're going to vote to acquit before they even heard any evidence.
Right.
You think it's ethical to have a trial without allowing a single witness or a single additional piece of evidence? I mean, if you can't see through Laura Ingraham, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree. And listen, Seth,
I remember being in Moscow once.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Moscow, authoritarian country under Putin and everything else, and you walk into this government building and they've got the state TV playing about just propaganda. State TV just does whatever, that says whatever supports Putin. And I remember looking at it and thinking, well, that's just like Fox back home. All they do is support Trump no matter what the truth is.
It's just unbelievable. And listen, if anybody knows a thing or two about courage, it's you. I know you're a very modest guy, but you risked your life for this country. You were deployed 4 times. You won medals for your courageous acts. And
well, look, I don't like to talk about that stuff, but the reality is that there are a lot of veterans out there who've done amazing things for this country. But the important thing to remember is that every one of us swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. Mm-hmm. It wasn't an oath to the president, not to the commander-in-chief. It wasn't to our political party. It was an oath to protect and defend the Constitution.
Right.
That's what Mitt Romney did. He recognized his oath that he took in the United States Senate, which, by the way, it's word for word the same oath that you take in the United States military, to protect and defend the Constitution. Laura Ingraham just has an oath to protect and defend Fox News and the conservative Republican Party.
There you go.
That's her only oath. She doesn't care about the Constitution.
You're absolutely right. What would you say about a woman by the name of Susan Collins, one of your colleagues, who after voting not guilty, after voting not guilty said, I believe he learned his lesson. That has got to be one of the dumbest comments I've ever heard in my life. After somebody commits a crime, do you let them off scot-free? And said, I think he learned his lesson.
Yeah. I mean, so tell her to go home and, someone robs a bank and she just said, oh, well, we shouldn't charge him. I think he learned his lesson.
Yeah.
Someone kills someone. Oh, well, I don't know. I think she learned her lesson. I mean, it's just pathetic.
It just doesn't make any sense to me, and I think there are a lot of Republicans like her who know deep down in their heart that he's guilty. But let's talk about the word courage for a second. Listen, I have a lot of respect for Mitt Romney. I liked him 10 years ago, and I like him today. I think it's sad, Seth, that we live in a day and age today that you vote your conscience and you take your oath seriously, and we have to call you a hero for it. I think listen, like I said, I respect Mitt Romney for doing his job. But, I mean, we shouldn't have to call him a hero. We shouldn't have to praise him to high end for doing what he's supposed to do. Do you see what I'm saying?
The founders of our country set up the impeachment process with the understanding that we might sometime get a lawless president. We might get a president who's just out for himself. In fact, if you look at some of Madison's writings on the impeachment process and the kind of person that would have to be impeached, it's an exact description of Donald Trump, someone who's just out for himself,
right,
is into self-aggrandizement, trying to, make sure that things are corrupted for his own benefit. Yeah. But they entrusted that power in the United States Senate because they thought that United States senators would have the conscience, the good conscience to remember their oath to the Constitution and do the right thing, even if it hurt them politically, even if it wasn't popular back home.
Yeah.
Sadly, I think if the founders came back today, they'd only see one United States senator, at least on the Republican side, only one United States senator who actually lived up to their expectations.
What do you think is the future now, though, for Mitt Romney? Because obviously, I don't know what's going to happen 4.5 years from now, Seth. I have no idea. What if he did decide to change, become an independent, or even move to the Democratic Party? Now, I don't agree with a lot of his stances on a ton of issues. I would imagine you don't either. But I think we both have a mutual respect for him. I've always respected Mitt Romney. What do you think about his future now in politics?
Oh, I don't. I'm honestly not a political pundit. I mean, I might be in politics, but it sure as hell isn't my background.
No,
so
I understand.
I'm not sure. But I will tell you this: 50 years from now, 100 years from now, he'll be remembered as a great man.
I agree.
He'll be one of the only members of the United States Senate in 2020 who's remembered as a great man.
I couldn't agree with you more.
If that's the long-term future for Romney, that's pretty bright.
I agree. And when he said, and by the way, I thought that was a heartfelt speech he made. I thought he was emotional. And when he said, I can tell my kids and my grandkids that, I took my oath seriously, I thought that was very, very important of him to say that. You can't say that about the other Republicans. Let's talk a little bit about Nancy Pelosi for a second. A lot of people on the right, including Matt Gaetz, very upset about her tearing up a copy of the speech, the State of the Union. And then Gaetz goes on television saying he wants to criminally charge her for ripping up official documents. Last I checked, a copy of a speech is not an official document. Tell me what the hell you think Matt Gaetz was thinking, number one. And number two, what did you make of her actions in ripping up a copy of that speech?
Matt Gaetz is thinking that he can get on TV. That's what he's thinking. If he says something like that, he just tries to say the most radical thing possible so he gets covered. That's what he's thinking. I know him. But look, Matt Gaetz, if you go to his office, he probably has 2 or 3 paper shredders in his office. We all do.
Right.
We literally shred official documents all day long. So his statement is absurd. Okay, on the face of it, he's just trying to get attention. But let me tell you this too: the fact that Matt Gaetz is willing to make this absurd suggestion that Nancy Pelosi broke the law by shredding paper, something his office does all day long with official documents, and yet not vote to convict the president when the Nonpartisan Government Accountability Office, the United States government itself, has said that he broke the law. I mean, that's just, again, just the ultimate hypocrisy. And that's the thing. You know what? I don't expect everybody on your radio show to agree with me. I'm sure there are people who are stewing and saying, I want to go back to Fox News. I want to hear someone, who's on there. I mean, trust me, I know. I mean, I love taking your callers, but I mean, you got a lot of colorful characters out there, and I know that they're not all going to agree with me.
Yeah.
But I just want people to know that they can trust them telling the truth. And that's the thing. I'm telling the truth. You may not agree with all of my views, my opinions, but I'm not going to butcher the facts.
You're right. And you know
that's
what
these people are doing.
You're right.
And they're butchering their own word.
I could not agree with you more, Seth. And speaking of telling the truth, I went on this show yesterday and I said I thought it was disgusting that the President of the United States gave a racist, misogynistic man, based on the comments he's made, Rush Limbaugh, in his career, a radio talk show host and entertainer, this award after all the disgusting things he said over the course of his career. I thought it was a joke. There are so many heroes out there that you could have given that award to. He decides to give it to Rush Limbaugh. Can you explain that? Because I just don't get it.
Donald Trump just has no respect for the institutions of the United States government, including the Constitution itself. And what we've learned under his presidency is there are a lot of things that aren't written into the law. I mean, we've just always trusted Republicans and Democrats, Whigs, whoever the party is. We've trusted presidents to make reasonable decisions about who gets the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Right.
And there are plenty of look, I went to war under George W. Bush. I mean, I saw a lot of buddies die because of decisions that he made. I didn't like W. Bush. I voted against him twice, but he would never give a Presidential Medal of Freedom to Rush Limbaugh. I mean, give me a break. There is a certain level of basic decency and respect for the office of the presidency, regardless of whether you're a Democrat or Republican, a liberal or conservative, or somewhere in between. There is a respect for the institution that just said, I'm not going to stoop so low as to give a racist talk show host a Presidential Medal of Freedom.
I would imagine many of your Democrats friends were appalled by that. Have you heard any Republicans say that they thought that was the wrong move for the president to give that award out to Rush Limbaugh?
Well, the thing is that they're also scared of his public persona and his ability to attack you politically. That their reaction is, well, he was playing to his base. It was a good political move. When are we going to get out of just doing what's right politically and talk about doing what's right for our country?
Yeah, and
putting the country ahead of politics.
Right.
Putting people that we're supposed to represent ahead of our political parties.
Yeah, and
that's what we should be doing.
And speaking of doing the right thing, Seth, I think I speak for you. I speak for many on the left that would say we wanted John Bolton to testify. We wanted Mulvaney to testify. We wanted Mike Pompeo to testify. Why? Because we want the truth. We wanted to see those text messages. We wanted all the evidence put forward, and then let's make a decision. Yet the Republicans block it. So my question to you is this. How can we have called that a trial when no witnesses were allowed to testify? It's crazy.
That's exactly right. And it wasn't a trial. I mean, it just wasn't. It was. I'd never heard of a trial anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, where there's no evidence. I mean, you don't get a speeding ticket without have a trial for a speeding ticket and have no evidence.
Sure.
I mean, that's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Speaking of crazy, what about Alan Dershowitz and the point that he made? Well, he made a lot of ridiculous points, but the point that he makes when he gets up there and he says, well, the president had a right to want to investigate the Bidens, and he also had a right to do all these different things because, he thought it was in the best interest of the country for him to run in 2020 and investigate one of his political rivals. That's totally okay because he thought it was the right for him to do that because it's best for the American people if he's the president again in 2020. I mean, that was the argument that Dershowitz made.
I mean, again, if we get in a big argument and I get really pissed off at you and I say, you know what, it's in my best interest to go punch you in the face. That doesn't make it legal. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know what planet Dershowitz is living on. I mean, he looks like an alien, but I don't know what he's thinking.
It doesn't make any sense. All right, let's. Do you think that eventually we will hear from John Bolton? What do you think Nancy Pelosi is going to do moving forward? We know that Bolton is going to put this book out. At least we assume he is, even though Donald Trump is basically threatening him if he puts this evidence out there. But here, what do you make of a guy like John Bolton? I wanted to ask you that, Seth, but here's a guy that could have come forward. He didn't show up when you guys wanted him to testify earlier. He ignored that request. Then his attorneys try to sue you guys, right? And then all of a sudden he says, you know what? If you guys subpoena me, I'll talk now. And then all of a sudden, conveniently, he has this book coming out and he's getting paid for it. What does it say about this man, John Bolton, that it appears to me he cares more about profit and making money than doing the right thing? Because he could have done an interview with Fox News or CNN. He could have done a press conference. Nothing held him back from doing that because he wasn't working in Trump's administration anymore. What does that say about the man, John Bolton?
I mean, he's just like Rubio and Alexander and Collins, who are saying one thing and doing the opposite, trying to have it both ways. Basically, he wants to clear his name by telling what really happened and showing that he's not complicit with the law-breaking president. I mean, that's why he wants to tell his story, because he knows that President Trump broke the law, and he wants to get himself out of it. At the same time, he wants to have the courts force him to testify so that he can go back to his Republican buddies and say, oh, I mean, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to throw the president under the bus, but the courts made me do it. They forced me. What am I to do? So he's just trying to have it both ways. And yes, he is trying to profit off his book in the meantime.
What does it say, Seth, that Fox News paid this guy as a contributor for 11 years? I don't recall anybody saying anything negative about him. And now all of a sudden, just like Mitt Romney, everybody going after John Bolton, including the president of the United States and everybody in his administration, and even some of these talk show hosts now are calling out this guy. What does it say about the Republican Party?
that the Republican Party is basically become a party that's an adherent to a king, that all they do is support Donald Trump no matter what crazy stuff he does. And it's not a party. It's like a party has principles.
Yeah.
You know, one of the Republican Party principles was we're going to be fiscally responsible. Well, Trump just passed this unpaid-for tax cut just for the wealthy and big corporations that's created one of the largest deficits in American history. You know, they had this principle that we were going to be strong on foreign policy, and yet Trump has just been retreating from Syria, where we were fighting ISIS and abandoning our Kurdish allies. He's been cozying up to enemies like Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin. That's not strong on foreign policy. That's pathetically weak. That's the kind of policy you'd expect from a draft dodger, which, of course, I forgot. That's what we got.
Of course.
But the point is that all these Republicans are abandoning their principles to just support a man. And that is against everything. That is the polar opposite of what this country is supposed to be about. My ancestors left England to get away from a monarchy, to get away from a place where everybody just supported the king no matter what he did, to start a country for the people, for, by, through the people. That's the kind of country that America is. But that's not the kind of country that Republicans are representing under Donald Trump.
You're absolutely right. Seth, we love you. You're a hero, and we hope you keep up the good work there. We know you will. And you have a great, I guess, you know, not to bring up Mitt Romney again, and we don't know what is ahead for him, but we know what's ahead for you, and that's nothing but success. You're a breath of fresh air, my friend, and we really do appreciate you taking some time to join us, as you always do, and look forward to speaking with you again, Congressman. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Take care.
All right, take care. All right, that is Congressman Seth Moulton, one of a few Democrats who actually walked out during the State of the Union speech. That's a hero right there we just had on our show. That's a man who risked his life for this country, was deployed 4 times, won a bunch of medals for his heroism, and that's a man who tells the truth. That's a man who doesn't really care what the political backlash will be for what he says. That's a man who believes in what he says, and I'll tell you right now, wherever Seth Moulton runs, whether that's for president, I don't care what it is, that man has my vote, because not only does he have the utmost respect from me, he is a hero, and he speaks. See, there's a difference between speaking your mind and telling it like it is, with showing some respect for the country, not embarrassing the country. That's a perfect example of that. Seth Moulton is an extremely opinionated guy. But he's honest, he's sincere with his opinions. That is a good man. That is what America should be all about, and those are the people that should be representing us. People who serve this country honorably, who are heroes, not those who dodge the military with bone spurs. Those aren't the people that should be representing us. And if you want to continue to attack Mitt Romney for what I consider is doing the right thing, you can go ahead and do that. We're going to talk about Rush Limbaugh when we come back. In fact, we're going to play a little game called Rush Jeopardy. That's right. Rush Jeopardy. Trust me, if you're a Rush Limbaugh fan, you're certainly not going to want to miss this segment. That is coming up next, and we will also talk about, again, the Medal of Freedom Award that was given to Rush Limbaugh and those that are going after anybody who attacked the fact that the president gave this award to Rush Limbaugh. And now we have people calling out the Bidens. We have some people, even on this exact radio station, that are saying they can't recall anything negative that Rush Limbaugh has said. We're going to play some of that audio to remind those right-wing talk show hosts that he has said some pretty bad things. But we're going to play a little game called Rush Jeopardy coming up next. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss this, folks. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. This is the Vegas Take, 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDAWN.